Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. This episode is part of our Indies Introduced series, where we spotlight debut authors handpicked by booksellers from around the country. In each episode, a bookseller from the Indies Introduced panel will interview the author of a debut title featured in our program.
Hello, everyone. Hello, fellow booksellers and book lovers. My name is Emily Russo, and I am the co-owner of Print a Bookstore in Portland, Maine. And I am thrilled to be here today with Bar Fridman-Tell, the author of the debut novel Honeysuckle, just out. Has a BA in art history and an MA in English literature. She gleefully wrote her thesis about Victorian vampires. I would love to read that thesis, actually, if it would be willing to be sent to me. She has worked as a bartender, a bookseller, a translator, and a library assistant. She is currently studying for a master's in library information sciences at the University of Toronto, hoping to stay in the library for good. She lives in Toronto with her professor husband and two very fluffy cats. And as I mentioned previously, Honeysuckle is her debut novel. Bar, I am so thrilled to be able to talk to you today. Honeysuckle, it was just an incredible debut. I almost can't believe that it's a debut. It is just that strong. It was an early contender for this list, and it stayed through the process, of course, right to the end. But we knew pretty quickly when we read the first 50 pages, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was one of the first ones we discussed. And I think we knew pretty quickly that this was going to make it to the top 10. Obviously, there were and are no guarantees, but this one we felt pretty good that it was going to make it all the way through. So thank you again for joining us today. I'm just so thrilled to be able to talk to you. All right, start off with some questions. All right. Just to give a sense of what the book is about, Honeysuckle is based off the Welsh tale of the Blodeuwedd. Now, did I say that correctly? Is it Blodeuwedd or is it Blodeuwedd?
Blodeuwedd. And I am also not actually capable of pronouncing it correctly because I can do the DTH at the end. I just can't. I tried.
Okay. So say it for me one more time.
Blodeuwedd.
Okay. So what about this tale interested you and made you want to write a retelling, for lack of a better word?
So I always loved Welsh mythology. I grew up on the Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander, which I think a lot of people my age also grew up on it. And it took me years to discover that it was actually based on Welsh mythology. But when I stumbled across the Mabinogion, which is a collection of Welsh tales that are myths, and which is absolutely gorgeous and so beautiful. I think I stumbled across it when I was in high school, and I fell completely in love. And the story of Blodeuwedd was my absolute favorite. I don't know if many people know it because it's pretty obscure, but it's a story about a girl made of flowers to be a wife as a way to overcome a curse that prevents her husband from taking a human wife, and who is later changed into a bird as punishment for choosing a different path and a different love. And she does a lot of questionable things, but it really never sat well with me that she was framed as the villain of it, when she never had any choices, not over her life, not even over her own body, which kept being changed first from flowers to woman and then from woman to bird. And a few years ago, I found myself returning to it again and again and really thinking about it from that perspective, from questions of agency and power and consent and what it means to be in a relationship where the power skews completely to one side, and what kind of ripples it creates, even with the best intentions, even if both sides enter it with good intentions. And I think Honeysuckle was what happened when I asked all these questions.
Yeah, and I think you did do a beautiful job of that because Rory is I don't want to say like a problematic character, but he is a very flawed character. And he's going into this with love and the best intentions, but it's just still not okay. So I thought you did that very, very well. So that, leads me to my next question, which is, this is a very feminist novel, yet of your two main characters, the only one who has free will is male. So can you talk a little bit more about that choice and why it was important to tell the story that way?
I'll be honest, I didn't think about it as a feminist novel as I was writing it. Because the thing I set out to explore was power dynamic and
Mm-hmm.
relationships. And I think no relationship is totally equal in the power dynamic, not in the long run, not ever. And that's not something that is unique to relationship between a man and a woman. It's like every relationship ever. But I do think it's very telling that in the long run, usually it's women who find themselves as the side with less power.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I could say it was historical and that it's not the case anymore, but I can't. It's still
Nope.
there. It's still
It's
here.
still, yeah, yeah. No, it's definitely still there.
And
And I think sometimes even if you didn't necessarily, sometimes when you set out to do a very specific thing, like I'm going to write the feminist masterpiece, sometimes if you set out with a specific goal, sometimes it doesn't quite come to fruition if you're like just coming at it from a different angle, it ends up being the thing that you want rather than like, I'm going to do this very specific thing. If you give yourself a little bit more freedom, maybe it comes, if you're coming at it from another angle.
I
Um,
think it's true because, like, I didn't have an answer. I had a lot of questions
right,
and I didn't want
exactly.
to give an
Yes.
answer. I wanted
Yes.
readers to ask these questions too.
That is a
So
much better way of putting it than I just did it. Yes, you were asking a lot of questions, but not necessarily giving the answer. Yeah, that's a much better way of putting it. Even though, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I've actually never read Frankenstein. But I also couldn't help thinking about that novel while reading yours, and that was also written by a woman. So I was just wondering if Mary Beth Shelley was an inspiration, and if so, how?
so I will say that I haven't read Frankenstein until the very last semester of my master's. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, and I managed to survive 2 degrees in the English department without reading it. So, and that it's amazing. It's really, really good.
Yeah,
Just for the record.
yeah.
But I had to write a very long essay about it that last semester, which was only a couple of years before I wrote Honeysuckle. So it must have been like in the back of my mind somewhere because I had done an in-depth reading. But I didn't notice the connection until I think the second draft was done, like until the book was pretty much the book. And I think it's because our starting points, the things that sit in the center of the book, are a bit different. I think Mary Shelley is interested in the morality of creation
Mm-hmm.
and what kind of responsibility we have to the thing we created. And I think I sort of skirted it by making Rory's sister be the creator. And that let me sort of approach it from a point of days created. The morality of it, questionable as it is not the topic. The topic is what happens now.
Oh,
What kind
yeah,
of
that's
prices
next.
both of them must pay? What kind of responsibility and how far will you go for it?
So I would love to talk about Day's evolution. Because when Rory's sister, Gwen, constructs Day as a companion for Rory, um, uh, Day has no decision making capability. She literally has no voice. But as the seasons and the years pass, Rory discovers a way to give her one, which, of course, Day is just appalled by. Um, can you talk about Day's moral evolution when she gets her voice and as she becomes more and more, I guess, quote unquote, human? I'm not sure I quite want to use that word, but once she has a little bit more decision capability and she has a voice, different things start to happen and her morality is compromised as well. Can you talk a little bit about that evolution?
Yes, and I think you're right that like it was a very fine line to walk with
Mm-hmm.
Day, and it was really hard because she is not a person. She does not
Yeah.
define herself as a person. She does not see
Yes.
herself that way, but she has the full range of emotions and needs of a
Mm-hmm.
person. And that was really hard trying to
Yeah,
walk that line.
I bet, but you did it beautifully.
Thank you. That's really nice to hear. Um, and I think the thing about that I really wanted to explore about her development is that she starts out not so much as without decision-making capability,
Mm,
but with her wants and needs always being secondary. She was created for someone. She sees herself primarily as someone else's playmate. And I think, and the ways she is dependent on him are so overwhelming. She, like her life or little, is literally in his hands. And her ability to say no is questionable because both that and her nature as a Blue Daylid. And you're right that having no voice is sort of like taking it to the very extreme, to the point where she can't express her needs because they are so secondary.
hmm
And I think her evolution is the way what happens when she has to define herself separately. And when she has the ability to reflect on her relationship and ask, like, am I consenting here?
hmm
Is this something I'm okay with? And this process of slowly defining herself and defining her feelings for her relationship with Rory and her agency there is what I tried to do throughout. Does it actually answer this question in any way?
No, no, I think it does, and it actually, I think the fact that you clarified for me, or you actually when you said that, and I think that's a very important point to make for the reader and to me as the reader, um, was the fact that, of course, the Dane never identifies as human, and I think that was a very important point to make, an answer to my question, because she doesn't. I guess what the way I was coming at it was, or why I thought of the question was the moment when she Day herself starts to use the birds to keep where she's at, and to keep her voice, and what a horrible moment that must have been for her, because she was so distressed when Rory did it, and that I'm sorry, and I saw that just heartbreaking decision as just the kind of the pinnacle, yeah, of humanity, and just making having feeling like you need to make a decision that you don't want to make, questioning your decisions, that is the pinnacle of human existence, is struggling with those questions, and how you want to behave, and how you want to answer those questions for yourself. So that was the impetus for the question. I don't want to give too much away for the reader. I probably already did so, but that moment in the book was heartbreaking. Yeah, you're so
Seriously, thank
welcome.
you.
Yeah, no,
Like,
it was so beautifully
heartbreaking
done.
is the best compliment I can get.
Yeah, okay, well, good. I'm glad. I'm glad. Um, and so my final question, although we might be able to come up with a few more here, as we continue talking, but I just, I want to get a little bit more into free will, and of course, in the addition to, or under the umbrella of free will, is bodily autonomy. And this novel brings that discussion to the forefront in many ways. Can you talk both about the importance of that subject, bodily autonomy, and how you chose to address it, both as a writer and through your characters?
I think bodily autonomy is sort of the one we take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, of course, there are things we can't control. Of course, there are freedoms that are questioned, but like the ability to control our own body, to have agency over it, is supposed to be the one that is unquestionable, the one that, like, they teach us as kids. You're the only one in charge over your own body. Nobody can
Mm-hmm.
touch you. And I think because of that, it sort of distills issues of agency and consent and power and takes it to the max because this is the one thing we're supposed to take for granted. And I think this is also what drew me so much to the myths in the first place. The fact that her bodily autonomy is violated so much and so many
Mm-hmm.
times, and it isn't seen as a violation. It's sort of, this is the part that is unquestioned, this is the part that is obvious. Yes, of course she's made out of flowers, and of course she's later turned into a bird. And the question of agency or bodily autonomy is not raised. And I think the very cool thing about using fantasy or fantastical elements is that it lets us use the fantastical both as the thing itself and as a metaphor. So I was able to take her lack of bodily autonomy, the fact that her body keeps being manipulated and changed, and use it as a way to look at something we all experience every day, the question of how much autonomy we have over our own body and what happens when it's violated or questioned, or as happens right now, outright taken, and look at it in a way that does not make us want to hide under the blanket as much, that we can have the discussion in a way that feels slightly new or slightly sideways. I think this is what I love best about fantasy, when it does that. So I was really hoping that I managed to do it a little bit in Honeysuckle.
Well, I think it's an extraordinary novel, and thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you all to our listeners, booksellers, readers. I hope you'll pick this up, bring it in for your stores. And again, Bar, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA site at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!